Did you know that people forget 50% of what they hear within an hour and 70% within 24 hours? And yet, most presenters keep delivering content the same old way, expecting their audience to remember everything. The truth is, if you don't grab attention from the start, your audience won't stay engaged long enough to remember anything at all. In fact, studies show that a boring presentation can make people lose interest in less than 10 minutes. But don't worry. You don't have to be a natural-born speaker to keep your audience on the edge of their seats. With the right strategies, anyone can give a memorable and impactful presentation. In this article, I'm going to share proven techniques that will make your next talk unforgettable. Whether you're speaking to a small group or a packed auditorium, these tips will help you deliver your message with confidence and leave your audience wanting more. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Start with a bang. The opening moments of your presentation are crucial. You have only a few seconds to capture the audience's attention, so make them count. According to research from the Journal of Consumer Research, people are more likely to remember the first few minutes of a speech than any other part. Start by surprising them with a shocking statistic or a story that grabs their emotions. Did you know that 93% of communication is nonverbal? This means that your tone, body language, and facial expressions speak louder than your words, so make them count right away. For instance, instead of starting with, "Good morning, thank you for being here," try something like, "In the next 10 minutes, I'll change the way you think about subject." It sets an expectation, and the audience is hooked. An intriguing question also works wonders. Have you ever wondered why 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years? By starting with a bang, you create a sense of anticipation, and curiosity keeps people engaged. It's like when a movie opens with an exciting chase scene, you're immediately invested in what happens next. Don't just settle for a boring intro, make it unforgettable. Chapter 2. Simplify your message. Once you've captured their attention, it's time to focus on clarity. A study from the University of California found that we remember only 10% of what we hear after 48 hours. So, if you overwhelm your audience with too much information, they won't remember much of anything. This is why simplifying your message is essential. Think about your central message. What is the one thing you want your audience to walk away knowing? Make sure every point you make ties back to that main idea. Avoid using complicated jargon or dense explanations. For example, if you're presenting on climate change, instead of throwing out terms like carbon footprint and greenhouse gases, explain them simply. The air we breathe is getting warmer, and that affects all of us. Short, punchy sentences are the key. Imagine you're talking to a friend over coffee. Keep the tone conversational and easy to follow. When Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone in 2007, he didn't use technical terms. Instead, he said, "This is a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator all in one." Simple, clear, and impactful. Another tip is to limit the number of points you make. Stick to 3 key ideas, as the brain can only hold about 3 pieces of information at a time. So, keep it simple and memorable. Chapter 3. Incorporate visuals. Humans are visual learners. Studies show that we remember 80% of what we see, compared to only 20% of what we hear. This is why visuals are a game changer for presentations. But don't just add random images or charts for decoration, they should support your message. For instance, if you're explaining the growth of social media, a graph can show how platforms like Facebook and Instagram have exploded in usage over the years. But it's important to keep your slides clean. Avoid putting too much text on them. Instead of writing full paragraphs, use bullet points or short phrases that highlight the key points you want to make. Also, remember that colors can affect the mood of your presentation. A study by Color Matters found that color can increase comprehension by up to 73%. So, choose colors that align with your message. For example, blue is often associated with trust, while red can evoke energy and urgency. But visuals aren't just charts and slides. Think about including short videos or infographics. These can break up the monotony and keep your audience engaged. When used correctly, visuals can turn a bland presentation into something dynamic and memorable. The power of visuals is immense. In fact, studies show that the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. So, if you're trying to get your message across quickly, pair your words with an image. This combination of verbal and visual storytelling ensures that your audience retains more information. Want to keep your audience hooked even more? Stay tuned for the next chapters where we explore engaging with your audience, storytelling, and ending with impact. Chapter 4. Engage with the audience. Once you have their attention, it's time to build a connection. Engaging with your audience is essential for keeping their focus throughout your presentation. According to the Harvard Business Review, interactive presentations are 40% more effective in holding people's attention compared to passive ones. This means asking questions, encouraging participation, and making the experience a two-way street. When you make eye contact, you're telling your audience you see them, and they're more likely to stay connected with you. Avoid just talking at them, talk with them. Ask questions like, how many of you have experienced this? Or, can anyone relate to this situation? This invites participation and sparks curiosity. Another great way to engage your audience is by incorporating humor. A University of California study found that humor increases learning retention by 20%. You don't need to be a stand-up comedian, but a lighthearted comment or a funny anecdote can break the ice and make your presentation more approachable. Just be sure the humor aligns with your message and audience. Using real-life stories is another powerful way to engage. People remember stories far better than abstract concepts. If you're presenting about overcoming challenges, share your own experience or a client's success story. This builds credibility and helps the audience connect emotionally. Finally, involve the audience with polls or live questions. In today's digital age, using apps like Slido or Mentimeter lets people submit questions anonymously, encouraging shy participants to speak up. This creates a sense of inclusion and keeps the conversation flowing. Chapter 5. Tell a story. Humans are wired to respond to stories. Research from Stanford University shows that storytelling can increase listener retention by up to 22 times compared to simple facts or statistics. This is because our brains are hardwired to process information in narrative form. When you tell a story, you trigger emotion, making it easier for your audience to remember your message. So, how do you tell a compelling story in your presentation? Start with a hook. Begin with a relatable problem or challenge that your audience can identify with. Then, introduce the journey toward a solution. This is where you show how the problem was solved, whether through a personal anecdote or a business case study. For example, if you're speaking about time management, start by sharing a moment when you were overwhelmed with tasks and couldn't meet deadlines. Then, explain how you found a system that helped you regain control. This not only illustrates your point but also keeps your audience engaged. The key is to keep your story relevant to your message. Don't tell long, winding tales that go off topic. A story should be concise, impactful, and tie back to the core idea you're presenting. Keep the audience invested by including conflict, resolution, and a takeaway lesson. Don't forget the power of vulnerability. Sharing challenges and mistakes humanizes you, making your audience feel more connected to you. This transparency builds trust and shows that even experts struggle sometimes. As author Brené Brown puts it, vulnerability is not winning or losing, it's having the courage to show up and be seen. Chapter 6. End with impact. The way you close your presentation is just as important as how you begin. According to Psychology Today, the final moments of a presentation often have the most influence on how the audience remembers your message. So, your ending needs to leave a lasting impression. Start by summarizing your key points, but don't just repeat what you've already said. Instead, highlight the most important takeaways that align with your audience's needs or interests. For example, if you're giving a talk on productivity, you might say, in the next week, try using the time blocking technique I shared, and watch your productivity skyrocket. End with a call to action. A Forbes study found that 70% of presentations that include a call to action are remembered more vividly than those that don't. Whether you want your audience to sign up for a course, make a change in their habits, or simply reflect on your message, give them clear instructions on what to do next. A memorable closing doesn't have to be lengthy or elaborate. It could be as simple as a thought-provoking quote that aligns with your message. For instance, if your presentation was about leadership, you might close with a powerful quote like, "Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge," by Simon Sinek. This leaves your audience thinking long after you've left the stage. Alternatively, you could end with a question that invites reflection. Asking your audience, "What's one thing you'll do differently after hearing this?" encourages them to engage actively with your message. Another great way to finish strong is by leaving them with a memorable image or visual. When you end with a powerful visual that reinforces your main message, it sticks in the minds of your audience. Remember, your closing should be confident, clear, and concise. Avoid rambling or over-explaining. You've already made your point, and now it's time to leave with a sense of closure and impact. Want more tips to make your presentations even better? Subscribe for updates on how to speak like a pro and leave your audience wowed.